Welcome to CEDA's first face-to-face event in 2022. It's exciting for me and the team. We're really pleased that we've been able to get here. Yes, Lord Mayor, yay! The team at CEDA have just done a fantastic job, and of course working with the Lord Mayor's team and others. We've been trying to put this event on for some time, and we've had to be very agile as we've pivoted from one opportunity to the next. Hopefully all of these words will quickly leave the day-to-day vocabulary. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Melinda Salento. I'm the CEO of CEDA, the Committee for Economic Development of Australia. I'm going to just pause and apologise right out of the gate because I feel like I haven't done one of these for a while. And as my team knows, I'm super extroverted and I might just get a little bit excited. So if I miss a beat or two, I'm just going to apologise right now, and you, I'm sure, will forgive me. Let me start by acknowledging the traditional owners of this wonderful land that we meet on, the Boonwurrung, Boonwurrung and the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the East Kulin Nations. At CEDA, we're in the process of kicking off our formal reconciliation journey. The team have put together a reconciliation action plan group, and we're looking at how we can formalise our commitment to reconciliation through the development of a reconciliation action plan. If you've had a look at our program over the years, you know that one of the things we do consistently is try to give voice to the aspirations and challenges of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in this country. And it's something I'm looking forward to doing more around and working with the team who are really committed to this. Obviously, reconciliation is about building better and stronger relationships across the country between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and all of Australia. And I think it is the foundation of prosperity in this country. And I think we at CEDA have a real contribution to make. So I'm looking forward to doing just that. Of course, let me pay my respects to elders, past and present, for this custodianship of culture and tradition, and I guess provide my best wishes to emerging elders and leaders for the role that they'll play in the future. Now, I mentioned that we've been chopping and changing and having to reschedule this event. A big thank you to our partners and sponsors for their ongoing support through what has been challenging times, and for their support for this wonderful event today. When I run through the three sponsors today, you'll see what we've got is, I think, testament to CEDA's longevity and the great support that we've had from members for a long time, but also, excitingly for us, the support we're starting to see from new members who are joining us as we really push forward on our purpose to deliver better social and economic outcomes for all Australians. Today's sponsors are the ANZ Banking Group. They've been a lead member of CEDA's for a long time, having joined us in 1968. GJK Facility Services are an Elevate member, and they're celebrating their first year of membership, so it's really pleasing to see them supporting us and engaging in our work so soon out of the gate, if I can put it that way. And Plenary Group have been a lead member with us for more than a decade, having joined CEDA in 2006. We're also pleased to be able to showcase some support and products, if you like, from a number of members and supporters. Treasury Wine Estates, another first-year CEDA member. They're providing the wines today, so please enjoy those. And Seven Seeds Coffee Roasters, who are providing an array of coffees, which I think are displayed at the back of the room, but I'm not quite sure. Obviously, for those of you in Melbourne, you would be familiar with their fantastic coffee brand. I'm going to pause here and say a huge thank you to everyone who's brought a corporate table here today. It's really important to us, obviously. You make these events what they are. And I think as we're all sort of trying to imagine how we bring people back together in our own workplaces, but back into this wonderful CBD, that bringing corporate tables along is one way that you can do that. And we're really hoping to see lots of you at our events in the future, and really so pleased to see you here today. We've got a number of the CEDA team here. I'm just going to quickly let you know who they are. If you'd like to know more about what we're up to, more about CEDA membership or the program events, they're the ones to talk to. Our Director of Program Content is Joanne Lilly. I can see her in the middle there. Sharon Braun, anyone who's been to a CEDA event probably knows Sharon. I'm not sure where she is, but she's around. Jack Patterson, Jennifer Kim, Laura Patterson, and our Director of Membership, Mel Nelson, and Mark Flower from the membership team as well. So if you don't know them, please look them up and have a chat to them, and they can tell you a bit more about what we're up to. Now, a little bit of housekeeping. What we always like to do, we love the conversations in the room, but we also like to take the conversation a little bit more broadly. If you are on Twitter, you can follow us and tag us at CEDA_news, the hashtag today, hashtag 3000. If you don't understand what that means, then I'm not sure what to do. You can log on to our Pigeonhole app, and the details should hopefully be up there on the screen as well. This is the portal that we use to allow everyone to ask questions. You can vote on other people's questions, and we've got a question for you as well, and we'll be giving you the results of that little poll later on in the event. Now, what else do I need to tell you? Please turn off your phones or turn them on to silent if you haven't already done so. In the event of an emergency, do what you would always do, which is kindly follow the venue staff or CEDA staff, and they'll get you to safety. Now, the format. Once I stop speaking, we're going to have someone come up and introduce Sally Capp, and then Sally's going to speak, the Honourable Lord Mayor, and then we're going to have lunch, and then we're going to have an amazing panel discussion with Russel Howcroft and Andrew Dixon, who's joining us via live stream from the UK. And the discussion is going to be led by ANZ Banking Group Regional Executive Kriston Schalken, and I think that is going to be very, very interesting and engaging. Enough from me, other than to say, I think for the last 2 years, I think we've come to appreciate what used to be business as usual, which is so many people coming into this amazing city. As an economist, we call it agglomeration economics, that people were attracted to being together and working together, and there were huge benefits. And now we're at this juncture of trying to figure out what the future looks like. It's really, really important. Our CBDs continue to play a really important role. But as we think about the future, being very deliberate about how we can make best use of them and bring people together again is critically important. So, if I could please invite to the stage Paul Crowe, who is the Chief Investment Officer at Plenary Group, and he's going to introduce the Lord Mayor. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Melinda. Firstly, I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. And thank you, Melinda, and thanks to the CEDA team for being brave enough and persistent enough to put on this event. It's great to be here and meeting people in public again, so enjoying that for sure. Just a bit about us first. So Plenary is a leading independent infrastructure developer and long-term investor specialising in public-private partnerships. We were established here in Melbourne in 2004 and have since grown to have offices across Australia, Canada, the US, Singapore and London. And we've been delivering and managing 74 assets worth more than 45 billion. So it's been a sort of a very successful time for us. But as a successful infrastructure developer, we do have a pretty keen understanding on what makes a thriving city and the impact that infrastructure can have. And particularly here in Melbourne, over our time, we've been fortunate enough to deliver in the education sector, the Monash College of Pharmacy in Parkville, in the tourism sector, the Melbourne Convention and Exhibition Centre, in the health sector, the iconic Victorian Comprehensive Cancer Centre, and in transport, we are delivering the new high-capacity metro trains. And we pride ourselves on working with our partners to deliver these important assets on time and on budget. because we understand the importance of that. As Melinda said, we've been a member since 2006 and have been a long-term supporter of events like these. We value these sorts of interactions, and we understand, particularly in our sector, that infrastructure investment decisions require good policy debate, and that debate requires the private sector and government and various partners getting together in events like this. Which brings me to introducing our keynote speaker, who really has played a key role over her career in public policy debate, even before becoming Lord Mayor. But as we all know, Sally Capp was first elected as Lord Mayor of Melbourne in 2018 and then re-elected in 2020. And she is the first woman to be directly elected as Lord Mayor in Melbourne's history. To me, Sally's been a keen advocate of the City of Melbourne over her entire career, and I think that's been an important distinction of hers, but particularly so over these last couple of years under the, pressure that COVID has brought and the challenges. So I'm very grateful, and I think a lot of business and residents in Melbourne would be very grateful for her advocacy in these really challenging times. But hopefully the light is at the end of the tunnel, or the COVID tunnel. And so today we look forward to meeting in public and hearing the Lord Mayor's vision and strategies for turning the surviving Melbourne into a thriving Melbourne. So Sally, welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Paul. What a lovely introduction. I too acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are gathered here at Town Hall, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people, and pay our respects to their elders past and present. CEDA, thank you for hosting this event in person in Town Hall. Absolutely superb. To you, Melinda, and your team at CEDA, we really do appreciate the strong leadership role you've played in the last couple of years. It is a combined effort. We'll talk more about that, but thank you very much for this event. I wanted to also say thanks to the City of Melbourne team. I'm really proud when I get to give speeches like this that I am representing their talents, their hard work and their combined efforts. Many of them are here today, so well done, team. Melburnians have endured the most days in lockdown of any city in the world. 262 days in lockdown, not counting, of course, the shadow lockdown that we've had as a result of Omicron over the summer. And this means that the new year really has presented us with fresh challenges, ones that we weren't wanting to face, but nonetheless, that's what stands before us. But I couldn't disagree more with those who say that the city won't recover. Things will be different, we know that. We know that 9 to 5, Monday to Friday in the office is no longer the rhythm of our city. We're not daunted by that. Instead, we want to run straight towards what that new rhythm may be. And we're already learning more about our new city rhythm. For example, the biggest day in the city last week was a Wednesday, and we've seen that the week before as well. We're also seeing more people come into the city for twilight, a time of the day we haven't focused on before. And we know from foot traffic that visitors have been quicker to return to our city, with our weekend foot traffic at 75% already of pre-COVID levels. And it's been lovely, if you've been in the city on the weekends, to see our city streets teeming with friends and family coming in the evenings particularly, to enjoy theatres, live music venues and our galleries. So the challenge for all of us is how can we make the most of these new city rhythms, particularly for our small businesses? Other cities around the world, big cities, are trying to reposition themselves, and some of them are choosing to become central entertainment districts rather than central business districts. We would say that Melbourne is already both of those, and we are not planning to give up either of them. We've all made sacrifices. Now is the time for us to be ambitious. Now is the time for us to take meaningful action towards a swift and strong recovery. I'm calling it. The worst days are behind us. It's time for us to really focus and accelerate towards a better future. So how do we capitalise on our capital cities' advantages? How do we use them to grow deliberatively and creatively? How do we use the past 2 years as a reset opportunity and redefine what we are renowned for and what fuels our city economy? We believe it's about being a city of possibility. On the topic of Melbourne as a central business district, let me be clear. It is a national imperative that not only do we revitalise Melbourne and its city economy, but that we set it up for success in the future. Before COVID, the City of Melbourne was booming. We had one of the world's most competitive city economies. Our gross local product was $104 billion in 2019. To give you a sense of that, that's 24% of the Victorian economy. It's 7% on its own of the nation's gross domestic product. We were the state's engine room, and our city economy, just the little city of Melbourne, 37 square kilometres, generates more in economic activity than the ACT, Northern Territory and Tasmanian economies combined. That's how significant the City of Melbourne economy is. It means pre-COVID 497,000 jobs, 17,000 small businesses and 52,000 international students. We were the fastest growing city in Australia and we were the 4th fastest growing city in the developed world. I spent my first 2 years as Lord Mayor working out how to manage and harness that unparalleled growth that we were experiencing here in Melbourne. Then COVID came and we came to a standstill almost overnight. For the past 2 years, that's meant that me, together with our City of Melbourne team, we have been focused on how we bring people back. To give you a sense of the depths that we got to, our visitor pedestrian activity dropped 91% on pre-COVID levels. That meant that our retail pedestrian traffic dropped 93%. And because of the work from home mandates, at our lowest, our city office occupancy was just 4%. That gave me confidence to say to the Premier that we were all listening and adhering to the restrictions, but it gives you a sense of the impact it had on the city. And whilst we are now seeing people come back, important cohorts like our international students are still only at 50% of March 2020 levels. So still much work to go. And for many of you, you will understand this, that particularly for our small business owners, skilled worker shortages mean that even though they may have survived the COVID experience, they are still having to close or limit their trading hours because they cannot access enough staff members. Well, COVID has taught us that nothing is certain and that adversity breeds creativity, and we saw it in spades. Like many of you who have been running businesses during these challenging times, here at the City of Melbourne, we were struck by reduced revenue and the need to make swift operational changes to adhere to those health measures and restrictions. I'm pleased to say that prudent resource allocation and strategic financial management has allowed us to step up in these unprecedented times. We have, though, had to realise $33 million in operational savings over this time. We've also worked hard to keep every member of our team in a job. We had to continue, of course, to deliver essential services across the city while finding new ways to support our residents and our business community through grants and other support measures. During a time of crisis, where there are no roadmaps, as we know, and no rule books, we did also take risks. Some of those worked brilliantly, and others we decided were stepping stones to bigger ideas, but that's the great thing about taking risks. We've introduced initiatives like the extended outdoor dining in record time, and this has more than doubled the outdoor dining experiences across our city. 800 new extended outdoor dining permits added to the 750 existing outdoor dining permits in our city, and it's changed the energy and the picture of our city for so many. Despite recording a deficit for the first time in 30 years, and over the course of our council term, we forecast a $100 million hit to our bottom line, this financial year we've gone ahead with a record $789.9 million city budget, the biggest budget in the City of Melbourne's history. And we are doing that because we know that our budget plays an important role in building confidence in our city, today and into the future, and the way that we are going about supporting the economic, social and cultural revitalisation. Now is the time for us to be investing in our city so that you can feel confident in investing in our city. Our investments are aimed at lifting growth not just over the next 10 months, but over the next 10 years. We have devised, I know it sounds boring, but we've gone ahead and done it, a very robust asset plan, a financial management plan and an economic development strategy that together set us on a steady path to revitalisation. I can see an accountant down there going, that's awesome. That set us on a very steady path to deliver on the commitments we've made to revitalise our economy. We've also gone to the trouble of making sure that we've had independent reviews of our city forecast, so I can feel confident to tell you that our city will grow to a $150 billion economy over the next decade, and that will be driven by being both a central business district and a central entertainment district, a distinctive offer that we have here in Melbourne. But we know we can't do this alone, which is why we have intensified our advocacy efforts to support residents, businesses and visitors on really big issues such as the return to office, local business support and the delivery of city-shaping projects, and we're doing that, of course, ahead of the 2022 federal and state elections. Our ambitions for this city need to be matched by other levels of government, and we need to work with private and community organisations to deliver on our ambitions for this city, and our ambitions are big. The City of Melbourne's 4-year council plan was released in June last year, and we will resolve to see that Melbourne emerges from this pandemic period as a city of possibility. Just over 6 months now, actually, it is 7 months, isn't it, for all those accountants out there? After 7 months, we've made significant progress on delivering on our council plan and our vision. We are doubling down on being a central entertainment district with an unparalleled reactivation and marketing program that builds back city demand for culture, entertainment, art, sport, retail, hospitality. This drives visitation and underpins Melbourne's status and reputation as the capital city for events and culture. As part of that, I negotiated a $300 million recovery and revitalisation fund with the Premier of Victoria so that we could bring back the buzz to Melbourne. It's been absolutely critical that together with the state government we have capacity to invest $21.5 million in major events across our city, new events, $2.6 million to transform city shop fronts and also to support entrepreneurs and creatives into new spaces. We've put on our biggest ever Christmas festival. We've peppered the city with FOMO activations and promotions. We've premiered our first television ad campaign since 2008, and we've injected almost $60 million in value to our hospitality industry through our very popular Melbourne Money Dining scheme. Boy, it was such a success. Hundreds of thousands of people using Melbourne Money, and it won't surprise you to hear that our most popular restaurants were Chin Chin, Supernormal, Thai Town, and Goldleaf Harbour View. If you haven't been to one of those, you simply must go. But so many others benefited from the program. And interestingly for us, what did it tell us about consumer activity is that the number one postcode outside the city of Melbourne of diners using Melbourne money was Point Cook. Who would have thunk it? Now one of our favourite suburbs outside the city of Melbourne. Now, as we continue to work on Central Entertainment District, of course, we will keep building on our Central Business District. It is key. This financial year alone, we're delivering Council's biggest ever infrastructure program, $244.7 million in projects. That will generate 2,800 jobs in the short term, but also maintain our capital city stature and really support us as a livable, thriving city. Included in that package this year is $50 million being spent as part of the Queen Victoria Market Renewal Project, 900 jobs this year at the market, $1 million towards early work to deliver our $300 million City Shaping Green Line project, and $60 million being invested in new open spaces around the city. Of course, COVID highlighted how important those spaces are. We're creating a city of possibility for our entrepreneurs, our startups, for existing business owners. We've established Invest Melbourne to make sure we have a focus on facilitating headquarter attraction, business support and fast-tracking permits and bringing down time and costs of delays of doing business in our city. We're transforming our permits processes by introducing, drumroll please, digital permits. Finally, they are coming to Melbourne, and we are reducing permit times from 12 days to 2, and where they're permit renewals, we're aiming for same-day turnaround, which will be revolutionary at the City of Melbourne. We'll continue our highly successful Business Concierge program, which has been about supporting, and will move into nurturing our businesses as we open and grow, and ensure that we are a digitally connected smart city that is a magnet for talent, for investment and for growth. We've set our sights really high on becoming the city that leads in clean energy innovation across Australia, and that we see more green jobs. And we're doing this by investing in a program called Power Melbourne. Get on board. We acknowledge here at the City of Melbourne that climate change is a threat, but it also presents a magnificent opportunity for us as we move forward. It's forecast that more than 100,000 clean energy jobs will come to Victoria over the next 10 years, and we want the majority of them based here in Melbourne. Fresh from the success of 2 renewable energy electricity purchasing partnerships, thank goodness I'm speaking before we've had lunch, with big city energy users, amazing 2 programs where we've partnered with banks and universities and big city energy users to ensure that every single one of our street lights, every treadmill in one of our gyms, but lights in city bank branches and lights in city libraries are now powered using 100% renewable energy. We're continuing this good work through Power Melbourne, which will rally a wave of innovation in mid-scale batteries, encouraging a greater uptake of renewables, but with a focus on every small business and every household being able to access cheaper and more sustainable renewable energy through this program. That's what the people of Melbourne told us they wanted, and Power Melbourne will drive new research, new technology, new jobs, and be a central part of a vibrant central business district. Now, as we implement these initiatives and so many more, we feel confident about our ability to transform and prevail as a city. We know that we've done it before, and we know that cities will also always prevail. That is the trend in the world at the moment, is towards cities as epicentres of opportunity, that agglomeration of attracting people, ideas, business and investment from around the globe. And we know that to create a city of possibility, our dependency is on making sure that we are a vibrant place that attracts people. Cities are about people. Office workers, international students and skilled workers have been slow to return, of course, hampered by the spread of the virus, ongoing lockdowns and more recently COVID caution. This has been crippling for our city traders. More than half are unsure they will survive the next 3 months. We recently commissioned exclusive research with Redbridge that found that 54% of surveyed respondents intended to work at least 1 or 2 days at home, a change to our rhythm. 20% nominated that the loss of family time due to the commute was their greatest hurdle to returning to work, a big reality check. But 59% agree that when working from home, work impinged on their personal lives more than they would like. And 53% of CBD workers believe that people who attend the office are more likely to advance in their careers. This is a testament to the scale, the serendipity and the stimulation that occurs in capital city working environments, and certainly here in Melbourne. Now, I'm somebody that has supported over decades a move to flexible working and will continue to support that here at the City of Melbourne. But I also am convinced that Melbourne is an extraordinary place when it is filled with people who are sharing ideas and working together. And that is what we are aiming for once again. It is essential that we can welcome more city workers back, and that's why we are calling on the state government to remove the work from home advice as soon as it's safe to do so. We've seen how successful partnerships with the state government have boosted our recovery over the past 2 years. There have been the most amazing constructive collaborations that have helped us deliver incredible economic transition and growth in all of the 6 bounce backs so far, and we're now unofficial 7th at the moment. Long may those collaborations continue. As I said earlier, our targets for growth and our aims for this city have been independently reviewed, and I'm telling you, this is what Melbourne, the capital city of Victoria, will look like in 2031. We will have a gross local product of $150 billion, which is a 70% increase on pre-COVID levels. Extraordinary. We'll be able to achieve that because there'll be 600,000 jobs located within the City of Melbourne, which is 100,000 extra workers walking around our streets, filling our buildings and making the most of our central entertainment district after work. There will be 270,000 residents, which is just over 100,000 extra people living in our streets and adding to the pulse of this city. And we will have shopfront vacancies as a key metric lower than 5% when they're currently more than 20%. These are big challenges, we don't underestimate them, but we know that our daily population of almost 1 million people pre-COVID, so 2019, will grow to more than 1.3 million people teeming through our streets and driving the biggest city economy in Australia. Melbourne has a distinctive offer as both a central entertainment district and a central business district, both of which build and create a city of possibility. Now, local government plays a critical role in what we can achieve as a city of possibility. We are the level of government closest to the people. We are interacting with our community every single day. We are so much more than roads, rates and rubbish, as you've just heard, and we have a solid track record to prove that we are up to the task of working with you to achieve those initiatives and revitalise the City of Melbourne. We cannot do this alone, as I said, and we are looking for quality leadership, visionary risk-taking and powerful partnerships to drive the future that we want. Only together can we build back better. I acknowledge all of you for your efforts to survive during the pandemic period, to pirouette and to thrive now that we are opening up again. Thank you so much. Many of you have also brought ingenious ideas to us, and more again are helping us deliver many of those initiatives as we revitalise our city. Again, thank you. Speaking of leaders, it's important that I acknowledge, in addition to Melinda and CEDA, Paul Crowe, of course, from Plenary Group and the work that you do. Kriston, no pressure on doing the panel later, Regional Executive at ANZ. George Stammis, who is the founder and Managing Director of GJK Facility Services. Russel Howcroft, who's joining on the panel, founder of The Grid and so many other things around town. Andrew Dixon, who'll be beaming in, because we can do that these days, from the Culture and Creativity place. These are just some examples of the incredible leaders we have in the City of Melbourne. Thank you for everything you've done to make today special. Can we all please feel energised by the possibilities that Melbourne presents as a vibrant central entertainment and business district? I hope I've said it enough times to convince you all, and we all have a critical role to play in that. As the great modern oracle Taylor Swift said, it's time to shake it off, Melbourne, and get on with what we do so well. Thanks for listening today.
Well, thank you, Lord Mayor. That was incredible. For anyone who thinks I might not have been listening, let me give you the tagline. We're replacing the 3 R's of rates, roads and rubbish with the 3 S's of scale, serendipity and stimulation. So, lunchtime now, everyone's going to be back on stage in about 20 or so minutes, and I'm pretty sure if you can't think of a question to ask after everything that we've just heard, I don't know what to do. So enjoy lunch and we'll be back soon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have enjoyed your lunch. My name is Kriston Schalken. I'm the Regional Executive of ANZ Business Banking. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay my respects, both past and present. Can I just say off the cuff how fantastic it is to be here in person. No Zoom, no Teams, no teleconference, in person. I was really excited to get into town, see the resurgence of traffic in CBD that we're progressively seeing, and even had some joy trying to get my tie together, which is the first time for some time. There's nothing like the buzz that you get in a room like today to drive new ideas, connections and innovation. ANZ has been a lead CEDA member since 1968, as Melinda mentioned, and we thank CEDA for the opportunity to take part in this valuable and timely discussion, Reviving to Thriving. Personally, it's a privilege to be able to facilitate the panel discussion and also the audience Q&A that we'll be getting to after the panel discussion. ANZ's connection with Melbourne CBD dates back to 1835, when the then Bank of Australasia opened a branch at 394 Collins Street, which is now known as Treasury on Collins. And across the road, across Queen Street, we have today our ANZ Gothic branch and the the Banking Museum, at 388 Collins Street, which was built in 1887, a time when marvellous Melbourne had a reputation as one of the richest, largest and greatest cities in the world. Today, ANZ's global head office is in Docklands at 833, in the largest single tenanted office building in Australia. And that is one of the 4 major buildings that we occupy throughout Melbourne CBD. Melbourne is absolutely part of the ANZ fabric, with approximately 10,000 employees traditionally working from Melbourne CBD and many, many more customers trading in industries that have been heavily impacted by COVID. We want to see Melbourne CBD thrive. As we continue to transition into COVID normal, the discussion around how we make this happen is really valuable and timely. Joining me on the panel discussion to unpack this is Lord Mayor Sally Capp, Russel Howcroft, Chair and Founder of The Grid, Andrew Dixon, Director of Cultural Creativity Place, UK. Now Andrew's joining us via Zoom from the UK, and I must recognise that it's 2 a.m. in the morning right now. So well done to Andrew. I'm sure Seven Seeds have sent him some coffee to juice up on to create that tentatively. Now, before I make my way over to the table and start the panel discussion, just a reminder that you can log a question as part of the audience Q&A via the Pigeonhole app, and we will pick up those questions when we get to them. Thank you. Now, time for tough questions. Okay. Lord Mayor, you spoke about the importance of Melbourne, not only for Victoria, but also for the country. When you think about Australia as a country, it's about the same size economically as Russia. And when we think about Melbourne as a city, economically, if it was regarded as a country, it would be within the top 50 countries economically in the world. But often we don't regard ourselves as that large and significant. Is that mindset holding us back? And what challenges does that potentially present us as a future? Maybe a question to you, Russ.
Me. Hi. Thanks for the question. It's really interesting for me when, in fact, you mentioned it, that we were at the turn of the last century known for our size and our success. In 1880, we built the exhibition building. We've got buildings like this, the one that we're in right now. And then we spent really all of the 1900s not really doing anything. I think the first civic building that was built in the 20th century was Jeff's Shed. So it took us a long time to actually sort of reinvest in who and what we are. And I do think that I do genuinely think that there's a mindset issue for how we approach innovation, development, new ideas. I think we really do sit back and just let a lot of the old institutions just carry on. Everyone in this room would be very aware that, you know, in the US, New York Stock Exchange, top 10 stocks are entirely different this century. So since the year 2000, entirely new stocks. That's not the case with the ASX. I think maybe 8 of the top 10 are the same. So there is something, I think, about our mindset that just sort of relies on institutions and doesn't really want to actually create new massive entities with new ideas, new innovation. There's a major revolution going on around the world. Our UK friend is going to be able to confirm with me, I hope. I think there's a unicorn per week listing in the UK. A unicorn per week. Incredible innovation revolution going on. The world is fundamentally changing, and fourth industrial revolution, right? So what are we doing about that? Are we thinking big, or are we going to continue just to rely on the institutions that we've relied on for more than 100 years?
Sally, Lord Mayor, do you have a view?
I do, and I really pick up on the themes that Russell introduced, and I love to use words like bold and brave, and of course buzz. They were my 3 contributions to our vision. And I say that because we have this opportunity of reset as a part of COVID. One of the silver linings means that we can reimagine, recreate ourselves. And if part of that is that we are bolder, that we are more ambitious, and I think that we take more risks. We have a very risk-averse culture in Australia compared to other countries I've done work in, like Israel. And I think supporting more risk-taking. As I mentioned earlier, we've taken risks. Some of those have been successful, and some of them we count as steps towards other ideas, because there are always learnings when something doesn't go as you expected, and let's face it, we should respect failure more than we do. So I think if we can embrace more of that in our individual organisations and give our city and our nation, frankly, a bit more of a social licence to take risks, then that will be a wonderful thing for what we can achieve. And I think it'll be a very important pillar to who we are as a society moving forward. Thank you.
Andrew, you spent a lot of time advising cities in the UK about reimagining themselves and driving prosperity through culture, arts and other manners. A lot of what you've been involved in has been about taking risks, and sometimes usually against a fair bit of reluctance. Can you share your experience in relation to that risk mindset and dealing with what's possible?
I'm an absolute believer in risk. You know, I'm the man that put a huge 69-metre angel in Newcastle Gateshead that's done big projects. But I absolutely agree with Sally that, you know, a city the size of Melbourne needs to think big and it needs to take risks. But unfortunately, COVID has changed things for the population, and people are not prepared to take risks anymore. So I think we need to kind of tune into that in some way. I mean, the fact that Wednesday, that really excited me, that Wednesday is the big day in Melbourne now, says something actually about the way patterns are changing. And I think we need to go back to why cities and towns were created in the first place. You know, they're created as places to meet, places to trade. In Neolithic times, they're about, you know, people getting together and sharing resources. They're about markets, all those things. Melbourne's got all those things. But you know, I think it was a guy called Brendan Flatty said cities will only thrive and survive if the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. And so we've got to be really cautious at the moment about listening to our population and creating an environment where the physical and mental health of the city is thought about. Because Melbourne can do that. And Melbourne, it's interesting, I put out a tweet earlier this evening, or this morning in your case, saying Melbourne, the most livable city. And Twitter obviously doesn't recognise the word livable, and it changed it to lovable. And I think there's something really interesting in that. Melbourne is a lovable city as well as a livable city. And you've got to make people love it again.
Absolutely. Now, talking about risks and thinking big, I was drawing on some history of the bank, and you also mentioned the Royal Exhibition Building. And you know, in 1880, we held an international exhibition from there. In fact, it was held over 7 months, and I think roughly 1.4 million people attended it. And that was at a time where the population of Melbourne was only about 280,000, and it was regarded as the biggest and first official world exhibition in the Southern Hemisphere. Now, our population doubled pretty much over that, subsequent 10 years. You know, is it possible to do something big like that, that draws on that fourth industrial movement? Maybe the grid. Russ, you can talk to us a bit about it.
Okay, thanks. That's a lovely intro. Thank you. That's the big idea around the grid. So as everyone knows, we have the Honourable grid designed really for business. It was easy to sell the land. That was one reason why they did the grid, but also, and the lovely word that Sally used earlier, the notion of serendipity. It's a really great design for people to bump into each other, and as we all know in business, you know, it's never in the business plan the role that serendipity plays, but serendipity plays a massive role. So what we hope to do with the grid is to create a festival whereby we both in a digital sense and in a physical sense create a passion for innovation and a passion for what technology is able to do as our economy matures, and through that create this idea of serendipity where people bump into each other and are enthusiastic about the idea of actually developing new ideas. I don't know whether I'm right when I say this, but I think a moment in the calendar that says, okay, so today's grid day or grid week, we have now got permission because it's grid week to get excited about ideas, get excited about innovation. Because I think we need, culturally, I think we need that moment in time that just energises us and gets us around, you know, perhaps not saying no so much. Maybe the slogan for the grid is, you know, it's not no, it's at the very least it's maybe, and hopefully it's yes. And hopefully we can then over time bring money into the grid, bring investors, bring people that are into investing in what is, the new world.
Andrew, anything that you're aware like this that's happening internationally for some cities that are a bit further progressed out of the challenges of COVID lockdowns?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think, you know, kind of big is brilliant. I mean, I haven't been, but the Dubai Expo, my associate Steve Brown has been and studied the Dubai Expo, which despite all the COVID problems has been a really interesting model, representing a city, leaving something significant behind as previous garden festivals and expos have done. But I do think, and I'm really excited by the the concept of ideas and innovation. People have festivals and ideas and they're really book festivals, but a true festival of ideas and innovation gives people a license to be creative and to do things. So great that you can think through that. But also, I think one of Melbourne's greatest strengths is, despite being a large city, it's a place of intimacy and a place where you can find moments of silence and beauty. And it's interesting looking at your Visit Melbourne website today. You've kind of tuned into what people are looking for. And as well as that kind of excitement and urban grit and buzz, people are looking for things that are fresh and outside, and the outdoor eating is fantastic. And they're looking at things that contribute to their health. And so if you're doing something around innovation ideas, I think health has to be a really important theme.
Yeah, thank you. Talking about beauty, actually making my way down from 55 Collins Street to here via Flinders Lane, I observed some young men who were very much into the skating form of sport and activity, taking some photos of each other at ACDC Lane, very much observing and appreciating the art and culture. So I think for all, it very much is a great strength that we have within our city. So building on the grid and that business commercial context within the fourth industrial movement, the events calendar of Melbourne has always been a great thing for all of us that call Melbourne home, but also on the global scale. Is there room for business and commerce events within that? And how can that be leveraged to very much coincide with seeing Melbourne, as you said, Lord Mayor Sully, as an entertainment and arts and cultural hub to drive business and commerce back into the CBD?
It's a great observation because business events has been a focus for Melbourne for a long time, and it really is then that collision of business with entertainment, culture, and a lovely feature of what we've been doing to be competitive around attracting global business events has not just been the expertise relevant to that conference, but it's certainly been the offer that we have for people to do before, during and after conference times, and the accessibility of that and the variety of that. We were actually saying over lunch that Melbourne's the only city in the world that has a Grand Slam tennis plus a Grand Prix. No other city hosts those two international events. But to some of the points already made, some of our most successful events are local and gritty. The Melbourne International Comedy Festival, says international, very local event that fills literally a closet. Here is one of the venues at Town Hall for a very small show, through to filling the Palais or filling this main hall at Town Hall. It has everything from filling bars and live music venues to State Theatre, and it brings hundreds of thousands of people to the city from all demographics that then go to a comedy event and a bar or a restaurant or a cafe or another event after that. It's those types of events that literally fill all the crevices of the city that we look for as we go forward. So I know we often talk about a big thing, like a big Sydney Harbour Bridge or Opera House, etc. That's not Melbourne's thing. Our thing is the experience. And if big equates to lots of people filling the crevices of Melbourne, then that's an awesome outcome, and that's what we're really focused on.
If I may, just one more little sort of perspective around the grid. So we have festivals, and those festivals reflect how we feel about our city. So there is a comedy festival. Yes, Melbourne is about comedy. There is a food and wine festival. Melbourne is about food and wine. We are a sporting city. We have amazing sporting occasions in the calendar, which is why I believe we need to get the grid up, because there needs to be a part of our culture, the idea of innovation, digitisation, new ideas, and a desire to go to another level with our business life. All of the things mentioned that are existing in the calendar, of course, they are business anyway. We all know that, the food industry is business. The comedy festival, it's about business. It's about saying this city actually embraces the new world. We want to be a part of what the new world looks like. And frankly, we want to be the home of, well, maybe not one unicorn per week, but I tell you what, one every quarter would be good.
Absolutely. Now we are going to transition into some audience Q&A. I believe there are some roaming mics, so if anyone has a question, then please just stand up, put your hand up, and someone will come around. And also a reminder that there is also the opportunity to ask a question via the Pigeonhole app as well. I am going to be taking these questions by way of vote, so a reminder also that you can vote up these questions, and whilst they sort of come in through. Lord Mayor Sully, you spent a bit of time talking about workers in Melbourne CBD, and I think roughly pre-COVID the stats were that we were close to 500,000 workers in the CBD, and I think at the end of last year we were seeing about 7% of those return to the office, and probably predominantly white collar as well. Reflecting back before COVID, in 2019 there was an article that was written about the booming growth of the CBD in contrast to the booming population of some of the outer municipalities such as Wyndham, Melton, Whittlesea, Cardinia, and the challenges around commute and effectiveness and time. How do we, for those workers, make the CBD attractive again to come into and spend time? What's the draw card?
Well, that phrase, earn the commute, is something we're thinking about every day. As I mentioned in the stats, so many workers are choosing to spend 1 or 2 days a week at home. They're concerned that the commute impacts their family time that they've enjoyed over the last 2 years. There are some big hurdles like that as we move forward in terms of attracting city workers into workplaces again. From our perspective, we want people to want to come back. If a mandate forces people to come back, they're not coming back for the right reasons. This is about how we set ourselves up as an amazing place for career and work opportunities, as well as cultural and event and entertainment opportunities. And so our focus is really on those attractions for workers to come back. Just a couple of points on that. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, I know many of you won't be old enough to remember that time, but we had a financial crisis in Victoria. We were described as a moribund city in a rust bucket state. We implemented postcode 3000, which was very much about the livability of the city. It brought chairs and tables out from the cafes onto the streets for the first time. It brought residents back into the city, not back, into the city for the first time. And it really started to talk about Melbourne as a 20-minute suburb so that you can access work, services, entertainment, all within a 20-minute walk. And we've continued to build on that as a city since that time, and it remains the central focus for us as we shape this city going forward, is making sure we have the mix of all of those things, because the more people living in the city, the more access to talent for our employers. The more people living in the city, the less the commute is an issue. But also the more people living in the city, the more attractive it is for people to come and visit the city, because working and visiting and being able to see the way locals use the city, the businesses that have started because locals have been supporting them, the types of experiences that have been developed with the confidence that local residents will support them, all of those things then become attractors to earning the commute for people further away. I think that whole discussion about big cities and everybody living on boundaries and needing to come into the city was a real debate pre-COVID, and we've amplified that in many ways, and it's real. We do need to make sure that there's employment proximate to where people live. But let's face it, Melbourne's the biggest employment market in Victoria. It will be the biggest employment market in Australia, and we have huge capacity to welcome more people to live in Melbourne.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
I just feel like I need to say something, Sal. I think there's got to be an age element to this as well. So if you're over 50 and you've spent you're over 50, you're a professional, you've spent a lot of your career in Melbourne CBD, how good is it, right? You've had 2 years at home, and in a way, you know that you're going to be able to have a lovely work-life balance. It's unlikely that that's going to change in the medium, even long term. You have an established career, you have established networks, you've got an established customer base. It's all really good. If you're young, well, that hasn't happened. So there has to, well, it hasn't happened to the degree that it's happened for a 50-year-old. We have to, I think, use this time as an opportunity to really get the city young. The opportunities for younger people, younger entrepreneurs, younger businesses to establish themselves, in the CBD, work here maybe 5 days a week, and really sort of re-energise the city and point younger. It was very interesting on the radio this morning. We're talking about the billions of dollars that are sitting in over 50-year-old bank accounts. You know, what are they going to do with it? Spend it on a holiday, or spend it on another car, spend it on another house? Well, what about spending it on young people's innovations? There's a thought.
But it does go to the point before Andrew jumps in that we're interdependent in many ways, Russ. So the research we did with Redbridge, I know Hassel's done a fantastic survey as well, shows that for all of those young people that we want to bring into the city, they do need older people to learn from, to receive support, to provide pathways, and so that interdependency is there as well, and how we make sure that we earn the commute across those demographics is one of the challenges we face. Andrew.
Yeah, I just wanted to repeat a quote somebody said to me the other day. Don't reinvent the wheel. If you've done it well before, try and do it again, but you do have to reinvent the wheel. So it's a bit of a strange quote. And I was absolutely bowled over on my first visit to Melbourne to have the kind of tour by the city planner and to see how you brought thousands of people to live in those upper floors, and how the flower stall and the coffee incentives. What Melbourne did was create reasons to live and reasons to visit and incentives for life. And I think it just needs to do that again. But I think the young people is a really interesting point, because you might not change people like me who have changed their ways of working by being locked away for 2 years. But a young generation can take ownership of a city. And in Coventry, where I think last time I was in Melbourne, I talked about a bid for Coventry to be the UK City of Culture. It's a city that's 7 years younger than the rest of the UK. 27% of its population was born outside the UK. And it's managed to do a kind of whole year festival through COVID. And where it's succeeded is it's completely engaged with young people, diversity, tackled inequalities, and put different faces in front of the city and enable people to look at their city in a different way, in a different light. So I do think the reboot for Melbourne will have a young element to it. And I think you just need to, you've got all the ingredients, you just need to reignite the pride in this place. And Wednesday seems really important to it all, in my view. I think people are saying something to you, and go with the flow of what people are thinking. Yes, do research, but the reality is, you know, people will come back. They are coming back. Play on the distinctiveness of the place and play on that youth.
Thank you, Andrew. Anyone got a question from the audience at all? If you can just please state your name and organisation before the question, that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, panel. Mish Eastman from RMIT University. Really great conversation today. Melbourne hosts our wonderful Australian of the Year, Dylan Alcott, who is a young person who is also an entrepreneur, leader of a foundation, and talks and understands language that I don't, because I'm a 50-something, but that he and others do because they're 20-something and 30-somethings. So aligned with some of Russell's insights, Sally, I'm interested to understand in real terms how we can harness the energy, the approach, listen and learn from our young community and think about how that can target specific activation activities, support mechanisms, etc., that capitalise on the beautiful assets that Melbourne has to offer.
And youth has that wonderful sense of regeneration as well, which is so important after everything we've been through. Great question. There are a lot of initiatives where we are engaging with youth. In fact, while we were developing our council plan, we went out of our way to make sure that we had panels of young people giving us feedback on what they'd like to see for the city. Not just people living in the city of Melbourne, but people from right across Greater Melbourne, because it's the daily population that we really manage for. The great thing about youth is they're big on bold ambitions, which we love, and they're not daunted by what we may perceive as older people as natural barriers. And a big focus for us are in two areas. One, as I mentioned earlier, is entrepreneurs and startups. So how do we create an environment for them to flourish? And even during COVID, we saw an enormous number of startups registered, and about 6,000 new people entered the startup sector in Melbourne, which was fantastic to see. And so we're really looking around, how do we subsidise more space? How do we provide those collaborative working spaces? How do we provide mentorship, etc., access into core issues like finance? That's really important. We're doing that as well with artists, because creativity, and I'm surprised Russ hasn't said it yet, but our artists really led the way when we came out of the early 90s and we reinvented ourselves. And again, providing spaces for them to flourish is absolutely key. So we're looking across our property holdings and others to see how we can provide more subsidised space for those people to come into our city. You'll be pleased to know that as we've gone through our shopfront activation program, which is where we are subsidising rentals, we've had 620 applications for just a few spots, and we take that demand as something that's very encouraging, and we want that energy. And when I talk to the real estate agents about what's happening with the big tenants around town, they say at the moment they're still sleeping because we haven't worked out what that new rhythm is, but they said the hustle is in the small to medium enterprises who are all ready to negotiate and come on into town, and that's exactly the sort of areas that we're looking to encourage come into our city.
And CBD properties, you know, for living, first home buyer, there's first home buyer deals?
They're a first home buyer. Thank you, Dorothy Dixon. Again, with the state government negotiated stamp duty reductions for first home buyers in the city, and some of the properties there's no stamp duty at all. There are all sorts of programs like that to really make it more accessible and affordable for people to come in, and listening to youth is absolutely key. I tell you, I got an email yesterday from a 9-year-old, absolutely committed to Melbourne and finding ways for 9-year-olds to be able to use e-scooters in the city. And what I took from that is, here's somebody absolutely passionate about our city and taking the time to write to me to make something happen. So that was awesome.
I'm sure we'll see them zooming around the city in the not too distant future. Anyone else from the audience who would like to ask a question? Whilst we're getting the mic over there, I will throw from one of the pigeonhole questions. Maybe a question for you, Lord Mayor Sally. Is a car-free CBD an element of Melbourne City's vision of the future?
Good question. I get that a lot. Our vision for the CBD is to be able to have everyone come in no matter what mode of transport they choose to use. We've got limited space available for transport modes, and of course we're seeing them proliferate, e-scooters, skateboards, segways, in addition to traditional forms of transport. So we're definitely working on finding safe spaces for all of those modes of transport to come into the city. The way that the city's operated in the past means that predominantly space has been made available for car travel, about 80% of space, but car travel now represents only 24% of total trips. Public transport is the number one, and then cars, walking, and bicycles come after that. So really, the work that you see happening as part of our transport strategy and what's happening on our roads is to reshape this city for the modes of transport that people are already using and that will continue to grow into the future. Cars definitely have an ongoing role to play in our CBD, but we're making space for other modes of transport.
Maybe Andrew, building on the 9-year-old with the e-scooter question, youth and also travel with those more greener forms of travel and accessibility. Any observations you've got to share from a global context?
I'm really interested in those statistics because I do research on cities previously on how people travel, because it's so important to planning tourism. And I think the move in lockdown in the UK to walking has been so significant that people are, using that as a form, and that dictates how far they will go and whether they'll use public transport. So, encouragements to walk, but I don't think you can dismiss the car from a visitor perspective. I think you just need to make measures that are going to encourage people to dwell and stay. And the problem with cities is, cars driving through and doing everything. We once did a piece of work in Newcastle where there's the conventional short stay car park and the long stay car park, but we really incentivized people. They didn't have to pay at all if they stayed a certain length of time. They got free parking. You can, there's park and ride and all those sort of things, but we linked it to cultural venues and also linked it to the metro and the underground system as well. So I think there are creative ways that you can reduce carbon emissions and cars in cities, but don't dismiss them, because people will still want to have access, and the access for some people will be by car.
Thank you, Andrew.
It's controversial, I know, but...
Hi, I'm Julie Olsen from Hester. And I'm a lover of Melbourne. I've lived here all my life, and I've lived interstate for a number of years, but always have come back to Melbourne. I'm wondering, with people migrating out of Melbourne during the pandemic and lots of them moving to Brisbane, do you think once they've worked out that Brisbane summer is way too hot, they'll just naturally come back? Or do you think we're going to see people moving from other states into Melbourne once we revitalise the city?
I think we should acknowledge that there's a threat in that if you think of sort of East Coast, I mean, it's even interesting the way that Australian media is basically run out of Sydney, and they always talk about the East Coast. Well, we're not on the East Coast. We're actually, south. So I think there's a way we use the language. Media uses language. Then you've got Brisbane taking the Olympics, as we know. And I think if we're not very careful, there will be a reorientation from a Melbourne-Sydney sense of big Australia, economic Australia, to a Sydney-Brisbane sense of Australia. I think we have to be really serious that is a genuine risk.
Yeah, last year was the first year where we had a net deficit to population in the city for decades. And that's certainly something that we consider very seriously. On the other side, there are some foundational and structural pieces that give us confidence about those forecasts for the future. And currently, the city of Melbourne is the cheapest capital city for both rental and purchase of property. And when we consider cost of living, those sorts of elements really are dominant in people's minds when they're making choices. I would say some of the other feedback we've had from the COVID experience is that people are being more thoughtful and deliberate about the type of lifestyle they want, and therefore making choices, whereas previously, almost unconsciously, people were moving with the flow, let's say. going where the gang goes, and we're seeing a change in that. So again, setting ourselves up to have those attractions that you spoke about, so that when people are being more thoughtful about the lifestyle they want, the sort of services, work opportunities and culture they want to be able to access, that they choose us first. And I would say that now is a time to remind ourselves we could never ever rest on our laurels, and we have to maintain that vigilance about making sure we've got the right attractions to bring talent and investment here to Melbourne. So competition can be a good thing as well.
Andrew, I know there's a bit of a global trend in terms of, health and wellbeing, lifestyle, flexibility, city home swaps, other trends of that nature. Any observations?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I've just done a piece of work in a rural part of England called East Suffolk, and there's a big trend of people buying second homes and holiday properties in Suffolk. And the locals in the rural area say this is a really bad thing. And what we were exploring was actually it isn't a bad thing, so long as you can use the occupancy of those beds in that place. So it's not just people coming, 2 weekends a year. But what it also developed into was a discussion about city-rural swaps. And actually, people think about second homes as being that rural retreat on the Ocean Road or outside of the city. But I think we need to start thinking about kind of city retreats and places in cities that can provide a base for people to visit. And I think there are interesting things to be explored around this whole issue. I haven't got any solutions at the moment, but I think it's an interesting area, particularly again with your vacant properties. Are there solutions that practically encourage people to come and spend time in the city?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. I think we did have another question from the audience. No?
Just for fun, I think I'm right in saying, I'm pretty sure Hugh Mackay said Melbourne started losing its way as the leading city for business in Australia because of air conditioning. As a result of air conditioning, you could have a Sydney lifestyle and be in business.
There you go. The weather relevance.
Great. Yeah, question at the back here. Kriston Simons from Arabs, from one Kriston to another. We're talking about competition, and we do like to compete against our other cities, Lord Mayor, but the true opportunity is really collaborating, isn't it, with our other cities and federally. We've got to compete globally to attract that investment. So be keen on your comments about how you do collaborate with the other cities and the federal government maybe globally.
Hi, Kriston, great to see you. I agree, the competition for good outcomes, but collaboration is really key for us as a small country population-wise, having to compete in this region and around the globe. We collaborate in so many ways. We have a Council of Capital City Lord Mayors, so every Lord Mayor across the nation, we get together regularly. We're looking at key issues where we can improve. Housing affordability and availability is one of them, given we've had a housing crisis. Climate change is another. Economic reactivation, as you can imagine, is a prime area for joint action, learning and advocacy into the federal government, where we've been discussing as a group major projects in each capital city that can drive that economic stimulation now, but city shaping for the long term. We've also formed a group called the M9, which is the 9 inner city municipalities where we have so many areas in common, where we're looking at issues like waste and recycling, economic revitalisation again, renewable energy is another one, and bringing that scale to what we can do, particularly in areas like recycling where we're seeing market failure at the moment. That's absolutely key. The last thing I'd say is that I am on some mayor groups internationally. One's run out of Europe, the other one's run out of the US. And one of the great sources of perspective for me that made me feel actually grateful in many ways during the depths of lockdowns was to see what was happening in other cities and see those challenges and realise that the way that we responded as a community to the pandemic really put us in a much stronger, I think, better unified position as a nation, as states, as cities, with all of the turmoils we have in comparison with many others. We were so much better off, and that was wonderful perspective when I was having a bad day or thinking things were particularly difficult. It's always great to see what's happening around the world and get those perspectives.
Thank you, Lord Mayor Selly. Now, we are out of time. Thank you very much for everyone's participation in that panel discussion. City of Possibility, I'm sure it won't be too long until we are the most livable city again in the world. It is there in front of us. We all have the passion and desire to make it happen. Thank you for everyone's engagement in that discussion. I would like to invite George to join the stage from GJK, and handing over the mic to him. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll adjust this. I'm shorter than everyone else up here. Just a couple of quick points. Andrew, why cities are created. What a great theme to get people thinking, and it has inspired me, living in CBD Melbourne for 25 years plus, Sally, as you know. Russel, grid passion for innovation. I didn't know anything about the grid till today, I'll be honest, but that's something we will really, really review as an organisation and see what momentum there may be. A couple of things. GJK's a national organisation here in New Zealand, and we've been in Victoria for 40 years at national office. As a private individual, 25 years living in the CBD, up towards that way. Sally, we've never had a more dynamic Lord Mayor that's full of passion, loves Melbourne than you that I can remember. And you definitely know how to shake it, Sally, so I think people take that away. My organisation is very proud to be associated with CEDA in this topic, which particularly resonates very strongly with us as a company that is responsible for keeping the public safe, and with everyone we've had to pivot, as with everyone, we've had to pivot and adapt to ensure we have the right products. We clean most of the infrastructure for state governments, federal governments, National Australia Bank. Every tram you travel on, our teams are working furiously during the night to make sure they're in a safe and great condition for Victorians to travel. The disruption of the pandemic has changed the nature of our social fabric, and hearing from key leaders on what the future could look like is both enlightening and in some ways challenging. I'd like to officially and formally thank Lord Mayor Sally Capp, Andrew Dixon and Russel Howcroft for an insightful and thought-provoking discussion, and to Kriston for sometimes a very difficult job of moderating. Thank you to all the attendees today. I hope you've gotten as much out of this session today as I have, and I'll call on Melinda to close the event.